Aloha and welcome, everyone. My name is Doug Rigg. I'm the Director of Alumni Relations here at Punahou School. I'm truly honored to be here with you tonight to kick off our 2022 Alumni Week with a wonderful discussion about voyaging, sustainability, climate change, and how Punahou's curriculum is responding to these very important topics that we face. As you may know, we have chosen a theme for this year's Alumni Week, Voyaging Home. We thought it appropriate for tonight's discussion, but also because you have returned back home to this campus to be with us this week. And I have to say that we were inspired by our amazing 50th class of 1972, who chose this as their reunion theme when they first started planning last year. So I would like to say a very special welcome to the 50th class of 1972, some of which are sitting here in the first few rows, and to thank them for their vision, their hard work, and their dedication to their reunion this year. Thank you. Just a quick note about the note cards you received on the way in. These are for questions that you may have for the panel. We will collect them following President Latham's presentation. Please pass your cards to the aisles when you're prompted. Thank you. Before President Latham begins his portion of the program, I'd like to introduce you to our panelists who will be joining the discussion later. Kumu Kaniala Lyman Versero from the class of 2005 comes from a long line of voyagers. He has been a crew member on the Hokulea since 2008. This past spring, he led Hiki Analia, Hokulea's sister ship, as captain on its journey from Hawaii to Tahiti. Kaniala is a faculty member in outdoor education and voyaging at Punahou. Next to Kaniala is his mother, Marian Lyman Mercereau, class of 1970. Marian is a former Punahou faculty, and she is a former Hokulea crew member who sailed on the 1978 and 1980 voyages to Tahiti. Our young alumni panel is made up of Punahou's first voyagers. They are the dreamers who brought Punahou's canoe, Kamaola, to life. Dylan Litsky from the class of 2020 first introduced the idea of a Punahou canoe to school administration in 2017. Her idea eventually launched a voyaging curriculum and club and the in-house construction and fabrication of Punahou's canoe. Emma Rose Lyoen and Alex Picken are new graduates from the class of 2022. They're amongst the first students to participate in new voyaging classes at Punahou and were integral in bringing Kamaola to sea in October of 2021. We're excited to hear from all of them, but first, here's President Mike Latham, class of 1986, to share more about Punahou's role and response to climate change and sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug, and thanks to all of you for coming. It's a pleasure to be here. I think this is a fascinating subject, and voyaging is such a powerful metaphor, a way to think about not only the passage of time, but the journey that we all take, how those journeys vary. And I think it's really going to be fascinating to think about the link between Hawaii's history of voyaging and these concepts of sustainability. Because I think one of the things that we've certainly seen is that they're becoming closer and closer and more fully integrated. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. One of the persons who we hoped would be with us tonight, of course, is Punahou's own Nainoa Thompson, a member of the class of 1972. But Nainoa is actually literally voyaging home aboard Hokulea at this moment as I speak. They are somewhere north of the equator, covering over 100 nautical miles a day and heading north. So that's certainly exciting, and we were really delighted that Nainoa was able to send us a message yesterday directly from Hokulea for this event. So we're going to show you a short video, and here's some of Nainoa's thoughts and reflections about voyaging and his experience at Punahou as well. So why don't we show that video, and then we'll have a discussion to follow. So thank you.
Aloha. My name is Nainoa Thompson, and I am a proud member of the of this year's 50th anniversary, graduating class of 1972. But I'm really disappointed I can't be at the reunion this year because I just need to be someplace else. I'm kind of in the center of the Pacific Ocean right now, working our way back home on the Voyaging Canoe Hokulea. And I'm here because I believe that this canoe has an important message to the earth about the earth, and we're here to protect life on earth, and the way we do that is through protection of the world's oceans through education. And the conflict in the schedule had to make a choice, and but very, very, very deeply honored that that Punahou and my awesome classmates would allow me to play a tiny little part of the great 50-year celebration. And in doing so, you know, I've been on this canoe or a part of it for 48 years. So 2 years after graduation, I would enroll in a different school, a school that was about the product of dreamers. It was those who were working on justice and recovery of things that are culturally important to Native Hawaiians. And I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But if anything that I could bring and permit me a moment of time is to really take a reflection on a couple of things. One is the impact that Punahou, the school, the legacy, the institution has had on the success of Voyaging in the last 48 years. And the list is really long. My family alone, my grandparents, my parents, my brother, my sister, all proud graduates of Punahou, all had significant impact in forging Hokulea's future to be something that would have impact. And when you add it all up, there's captains, there's navigators, there's other professionals, doctors that sailed on board this canoe from Punahou. There's countless volunteers and support systems that came from other graduates in many areas that make the web of complex responsibilities to keep these voyages safe and keep them successful. But the thing that, to me, that's the most important contribution of Punahou is really the teachers. The teachers that wrote books, that created films, that made stories for young children, that would reframe the world of the navigator that we've forgotten we lost, and reframe into the minds and hearts of young children the epic voyages that would have to be listed up as the greatest feats of exploration by humankind ever. The discovery of the Pacific Oceans, 28.5 million square nautical miles of oceans, and an amazing story that we're just beginning to start to put the pieces of the puzzle together. It was those teachers at Punahou that understood that this story of this canoe is worth it. And the Punahou influence is in many ways has allowed me to have the preparation to be prepared to do something like this, and that I owe so much to the institution and to everyone that are there today. Just my best aloha, and hope for every one of the classmates getting together, and at the same time taking a moment to think about all those classmates that can't be there because their time was cut too short, but remembering them about how much they impacted our lives. And so I know it's really, really an important day, but I send my best to all. Aloha.
So it's a really exciting history and exciting work to see. As many of you know, the Polynesian Voyaging Society was created in 1973, and it was a profound part of the Hawaiian Renaissance, the recovery of Hawaiian history, culture, and indigenous language and knowledge. And over time, I think in a really interesting way, that movement, that voyaging culture, also became deeply connected to an ethic of sustainability. And you heard Nainoa talking a little bit about that, this purpose of sailing in terms of recovering from or caring for the earth. Some of you may know, of course, the 4-year trip that Hokulea took around the world from 2013 to 2017 was also shaped around that purpose, that objective, to malama honua, to care for the earth, to care for creation. And I think that's one of the fascinating connections that we begin to see is the extent to which this deep interest in Hawaiian history, culture, indigenous knowledge becomes more and more closely connected to and a part of a broader concern with sustainability itself. Much of that, I think, and Nainoa has explained this before, but I think much of that also was built and shaped by Nainoa's own friendship with another Punahou graduate, Lacey Veach, a prominent astronaut. And the navigator and the astronaut in many ways began to build a very close friendship and discovered some common interests and became kindred spirits in that regard. But these are crucial issues, and they're things that we think about and are currently leaning into at Punahou as well. So it's an exciting thing to think about these connections. If we look at sustainability and we begin to think about it, in some respects, of course, sustainability is an existential challenge. I think many of us have followed the news reports in the New York Times and other venues looking at the results of the work of the Intergovernmental Committee on Climate Change, led by the United Nations. And we've seen, in fact, the findings of scientists indicating that if the Earth's temperature begins to rise above 1.5 degrees Celsius, above pre-industrial levels, that we'll begin to see really dramatic and significant changes. Changes that would involve alteration of weather patterns, changes in crop and food production, reduction of biodiversity, rising sea levels, other really significant impacts on the Earth that we all share. Part of that, of course, in longer run forecasts, which suggests perhaps that we could even see changes of 2 or even 3 degrees Celsius by the end of the century, would involve having parts of the global surface become uninhabitable, unfit for human life, or possibly the massive relocation of elements of the global population. Quite serious and sobering things to consider and to think about. But the scientists also point out that while as time goes by, the window for possible change becomes narrower and narrower, we still have the opportunity to take significant steps that alter that picture, to take steps which would in fact reflect that ethic of care and have a significantly different impact and result. And so I think there's truly a hopeful side to this, a side which we should be encouraged by and leaning into. And so while in some ways we think about sustainability as an existential challenge, we also think about it as a space for enormous creativity and innovation. A space where I think in the technology, in research, in different forms of organization, human collaboration, really a reinvention of what we're capable of, there's a space for really tremendous innovation and entrepreneurial work. And that I find especially exciting as an educator. That's an area where I think we can do remarkable and really exciting things together. At Punahou, we've been thinking about sustainability in 3 different dimensions, and I'll say a little bit about each of these. First, we've been thinking a lot about sustainability as an element of education from kindergarten through 12th grade. What are the things that we want to make sure that every Punahou student experiences, learns, and knows with respect to sustainability and the difference that they can make? Where in our campus and where in our curriculum does that happen? And what kind of experiences do students have that enable them to learn and to grow such that this becomes something truly important to them, a part of their own values and future commitments? Second, we want to give students the chance to apply what they learn to authentic, real-world challenges and problems. A Punahou education shouldn't remain confined within the walls of a classroom. In fact, we want to give our students an opportunity to see the relevance of what they learn, to apply it and to have the excitement to realize that they can, in fact, make a significant difference. In the future, I think, in a really real way, all jobs in some ways will be jobs related to or connected to sustainability. That ethic, that goal will ultimately become a part of the work that we all do in different fashions, regardless of what career paths we happen to pursue. And I think we want to give our students a sense of the way in which what they're doing truly matters. Finally, we're taking a good look at our school's own sustainability profile. What is it that Punahou does to try to make our operations, our institution, as green as possible? How can that be a part of the education that we do, and how can that be part of an example that we help set for others? If we look at that first issue around sustainability, and we think about the different grade levels, it's really exciting to see the extent to which this is already present throughout much of Punahou's curriculum. If you go to visit the junior school, and you go to visit the kindergarten and first graders up at Omidyar, which is one of my favorite things to do, to leave behind a budget or some other problem, to shut off my email and spend time with 5-year-olds. But if you go up there, what you'll actually discover is that they're doing all kinds of sustainability work. They're learning how to compost in a shared garden. They're collecting water from cisterns. They're beginning to think about the water cycle. They're looking at the way that plants grow, the way that animals engage with the natural environment. It's one of the things that I find really exciting and interesting. And if you go ahead and you look at other elements of the junior school, in our Kwasasa neighborhood for grades 2 through 5, or in the middle school, you see similar kinds of creativity. You see kids learning about the nitrogen cycle. You see them traveling to the Big Island and studying ohia and lehua plants and their changing environment. We have a thriving outdoor education program, which begins to take kids really from the time that they're quite small out into different settings, in rainforests and hiking trails, and other places where they can actually be a part of and engage with that natural environment. This is more and more a part of the work that kids are doing, and I find it really exciting. It's fun and interesting to go to chapel and discover a group of second graders talking about the dangers of single-use plastics, but doing so in a really thoughtful way, and in fact, talking about how they're cleaning up a beach. So it's becoming more and more a part of the culture of what our kids are growing up with, which I find profoundly encouraging. And similar kind of work is underway in the academy at the high school level. Many of you know we have a whole new set of courses which students in 9th and 10th grade can pursue. They're called Global Sustainability by Design courses. They're project-based, and they involve having students look at the UN sustainability goals and come up with projects that are directly in response to them. I've been really fascinated to see enrollments rising in a number of key areas. We are now offering 9 sections of advanced placement environmental science. Every year we have on the order of 300 academy students taking that class, which is a reflection of the growing and really compelling interest in this area. By contrast, when I was a student at Punahou, that class did not exist. And it is now very much a part of the work that our students are doing. We have a thriving design thinking program, which involves engineering, all kinds of applications, which our students can talk about a little bit more. And we have a really dynamic and really exciting Voyaging program, too. So it's been fascinating to see our students really lean into this kind of work. I think one of the realizations is that for many of us, of my generation or older perhaps, these are things that we've learned about as adults. These are things we've suddenly come to realize or hear about much later in our lives. These students have grown up with these questions, and the changes that they're potentially looking at and seeking to mitigate are not abstract, remote concepts. They're changes which they can get a sense of and see unfolding in front of them, and so the sense of urgency and the sense of commitment is really quite striking. We're also in the process now of planning what I'm very excited about, which is a new venture to create a certificate program in sustainability studies. This would be a program which would be open not only to Punahou students, but to students from across the state, to public school students in the DOE system, to students attending other independent schools. And it would combine 3 areas. It would combine academic coursework in science and public policy and economics, giving students exposure to some of the key fundamental concepts around sustainability, and ideally earning some college credit while they do so. Second, it will have a significant public-facing component involving internships or volunteer experiences with different kinds of organizations. Some of them might be nonprofits or community organizations. Others could be private sector. Some might be educational partnerships where students would be involved in doing research projects. And then finally, we're looking at a kind of capstone project which would typically involve the kind of independent study that students would pursue. We're really excited about this because I think that connection between academic knowledge and the real application is very exciting and compelling. And we want to give students an opportunity to do something which really, no pun intended, helps plant a seed such that as they begin to think about their future steps into college or university life, they've discovered an interest, had some exposure to it, and that might shape their future direction. That's something that we're just now beginning to work on. Finally, we're looking carefully at our own footprint, at what Punahou itself does to become the most sustainable institution we possibly can. Punahou's made remarkable progress looking at our issues related to energy consumption and use. As many of you know, we've been advancing steadily toward a net zero energy profile. Some of the facilities on our campus, most notably the new Kwasasa neighborhood, are themselves net zero, or even net negative, generating significant power, which is really exciting. But we have an opportunity, I think, to build on the work that a number of our faculty and staff did previously, thinking about a comprehensive strategy for sustainability involving not only energy, but looking at water, food, transportation, waste, some of the other elements that really allow us to pursue a more integrated strategy. And that, too, is another space where we think students can be involved in a remarkable and compelling way. So there's a lot going on here that we're really excited about as we lean into this area. We're in the process now actually of hiring the school's inaugural director of sustainability as well to help lead these efforts forward. Honestly, I can think of no area, perhaps I really can't think of an area that is more important than this one in terms of what we can do with K-12 education. And I'm very excited about this as an emerging priority for the school. Finally, as we're going to talk more about, we've done some really interesting and exciting work looking at voyaging at Punahou. And we have some experts with us, people who've been involved in this program. And we're going to spend some time talking about their experience, talking about the work that they've done, what's excited them, what's motivated them. And we're going to be eager to have your questions as well. So all of you who have received note cards, those were passed out. And we're going to have a bit of a conversation here with this panel. But I encourage you to go ahead as you listen to the conversation, or as perhaps something I said caught your attention, go ahead and jot down some questions. We're going to collect your cards, and we want to actually bring your questions forward too, so we can have the most vibrant and engaging conversation that we can. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and begin our conversation. And I'm going to speak, I think, first could direct a question to Kaniala. And perhaps you can tell us a little bit about your recent experience. You captained Hiki Analia from Hawaii to Tahiti, and of course you were involved as well in the global voyage. I'd love to hear a little bit about your experiences and what that's meant to you, perhaps how you became involved in it, and what this most recent trip was like.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Latham. It's always a hard transition to come back to land, from a voyage like that, and it takes some time. And this is a voyage I wanted to do for, a large part of my life. My mother's done it, my uncles have done it, and I've only heard of this, Hawaii to Tahiti. And I didn't really know I was going to be the captain until about 2 weeks before we were going to leave. And, Captain Bruce Blankenfeld called me, and, first I had to check with the family, then I got to check with work. And I'm forever grateful that Punahou let me go and enjoy these experiences. And, without going too long into it, it was just, on all those voyages we did throughout the Malama Honua worldwide voyage, it was again, building on this whole olelo no iao, he va'a, he moku, he va'a. Means the canoe is an island, the island is a canoe. And, when I first got into it, I was helping Ka'au Moana Makeni, and he's the one that first ever took me sailing, and that's when I got hooked. And I thought it would be great. I learned about the stars, I'm gonna learn about the waves, learn more about the ocean, learn more about sailing. And what I found, the big one was learning the whole navigation aspect. The hardest part is the people. Yeah, and the best part, or worst part, can be the people. And so, I'm thinking about that, and those first 3 days when we're just getting buckets of water over our head, plowing through the Pacific Ocean, I'm wondering, why am I doing this? I have a beautiful family. I love my job. I was surfing every day in warm water. I'm freezing cold right now. Everybody's throwing up over the side. And then it opens up, and all you see is stars, and people kind of release themselves, and they let go of their egos, and they come to a common goal to get the va'a to this destination. And our role on Hiki'anlia, it's not easy. We gotta watch Hokulea. That's our job, and I was a kuleana. And, the way it worked out, Uncle Bruce Blankenhupfeld, who we've always sailed with, he didn't come. And so we had to do it ourselves, and all of us young crew that sailed on a worldwide voyage, had to do it. And it was a crew, and the crew came together, and we did it. And so for me, that was, again, the most beautiful part of it. We had amazing nights of stars, phenomenal ocean conditions, dolphins diving through bioluminescence in the middle of the night like you've never seen. And at the end of the day, it's the people and the crew that make it all worth it. So, yeah, lots of other sea stories, but I'll try not to go too long here.
That's great, really exciting. Marion, you were involved with Hokulea very early on, I think in its sort of original iteration, and of course you've had a chance to watch and observe the way that the Voyaging Society and the work of Hokulea has changed over time. I'd love to get your thoughts about what you see as perhaps some continuity or some significant differences that you would identify over this period. We heard Nainoa talking about his 48 years of involvement, which is kind of amazing, actually. And I'd love to have your perspective on some of that.
Yeah, 1974, I got a chance to meet Herb Cunning, one of the founders of the Polynesian Voyaging Society, and we were on a sail. My oldest brother invited me to sail from Lahaina to Honolulu, the annual Labor Day race. And it usually takes about 5 hours, but there was no wind and it took about 15. So I got to know her really well. And he was telling me about this vision, this plan that they had. And the more I heard him talk about it, the more I wanted to get involved. And he told me that the canoe was just frames down at Dillingham Shipyard. And I could, if I really wanted to get involved, I could go help build her. And I thought, okay, but all I ever made was a cutting board in Mr. Woodward's shop class. Didn't know how much I could help. But the first day, the guy, the boat builder, Kurt Ashford, gave me, he drew a cleat out on a piece of wood, and he said, go cut this on the jigsaw. And I'm like, Mr. Woodward never let us use the jigsaw. And he says, watch out for your fingers. Well, at that time, I had finished college, and I was substituting between Punahou and Kamehameha, and I was coaching gymnastics up at Kamehameha. And I was starting to turn down sub jobs, much to my mother's chagrin, because I wanted to be down helping build the canoe. Long story short, the canoe left in 1976. I made the decision after they were saying, if we take women, and that if became louder and louder, I made the decision to join the Peace Corps. So I was in Palau and my mother sent down clippings saying, your oldest brother sailed as a captain with Kavika Kapahulehua down to Tahiti. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not bitter. And then it turned out my other brother sailed her back. That's 1976. So the vision then was to disprove the accidental drift theory by proving, that they could do non-instrumental navigation. And Mao proved that. So now they're talking about 1978, and Nainoa has spent 2 years basically in the planetarium with Wilka Selka. And the vision now is that a Hawaiian-born navigator will do the same thing that Mao did, and we capsize. And the vision was still to go on. Pinky Thompson really pushing us along. I got to sail with Nainoa on his first voyage as non-instrumental navigator with Mao, Shorty Bertelman, and Kalepa Babayan, who were all Po navigators. So it was accomplished, basically, the original vision. Nainoa then, being the visionary that he is, wanted to go farther to other islands throughout the Pacific, and there were more voyages along that line. And then the whole sustainability and the round the world, after many, many voyages throughout the Pacific, came along, and I think Nainoa basically caught a wave, knowing that our Hawaiian indigenous culture and indigenous cultures throughout the world had been living sustainably, and that was an area that he really latched onto, and I think wanted to share Hawaii and with other indigenous cultures throughout the world. So it's just taken this huge, huge leap.
That's terrific. Thank you so much. Dylan, I think in many ways you were instrumental in bringing Voyaging to Punahou, and I'm curious as to what experiences you had and what made you decide that was something that you wanted to be a part of.
So my family on Kauai helped to build Namahoi, which is a sister canoe of Hokulea. So I was visiting them one summer and just went down to dry dock to help out. And just stepping onto Namahoi, I felt very overwhelmed, but I could definitely tell that there was so much to be learned, and people started handing me lines, and I just wanted to, I've always really felt drawn to the ocean and to wa'a through paddling and through surfing and things like that. So it was just kind of a natural pathway that it led me to wa'a. And then after coming back from Namahoi, that same trip while I was over there, a crew member of Namahoi actually told me, "You should build a wa'a kaulua for Punahou." And at the time, like I said, I had no idea how to even tie knots or didn't really know how to do anything related to voyaging, but the way that he talked about this canoe, it just seemed like this canoe was already here. And the more he talked about it, and he kind of painted the picture for this wa'a that we could be building, not just for Punahou, but at Punahou for the broader community. And his words just kind of stuck with me, and I came back and couldn't really shake it. And so I called up Kumu Malia Ane, who is my 3rd grade teacher. She's also been a big mentor for me in my life, so I called her up and told her about my trip to Kauai and my desire to connect with wa'a more, and then this idea that had been planted in me, and she connected me with Kaniala and kind of told me who to talk to, and then just through these connections with people, I started to volunteer up at Vananapaoa, which is a sailing canoe on the North Shore, and then also with Hokulea and Hikianalia, just doing dry dock and then doing little coastal sails up on the North Shore. So definitely through the people, just meeting new people who are involved in the community, and then you start to realize that these people are all around you, and this ohana wa'a is huge. And then people like Auntie Marian, who is my 8th grade teacher, was I didn't know that she was one of the first Hokulea crew members, and then a lot of people in our Punahou community are a part of Ohana Wa'a, so the people definitely kept me there, and just the abundance of knowledge there was to learn really connected me to voyaging, and I had this desire to learn more.
That's terrific, thank you. Alex, what made this exciting for you, or what got you interested in being a part of a voyaging program? I'm curious as to what drew you to it.
I think where it started for me is I was born just down the street at the Children's Hospital, and I had moved away because of work, my parents' work, and I only returned home about 6 years ago, and I kind of struggled to find a connection back to my birthplace. I enjoyed hula and I enjoyed surfing, but with Kumukaniola's class, I found something I really enjoyed, and I took it and said, this is what I'll do to give back to my birthplace. And I think that also led me to be more in tune with sustainability, with also preserving my birthplace and my home.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, Alex. And so, Emma, following on this theme of sustainability, I know you've done a lot of work with engineering and design thinking, and I'm curious as to what connections you saw in those courses and that kind of work with this broader theme of sustainability.
So yeah, I took a lot of engineering courses and technology, heavily technology involved courses throughout pretty much my whole life, and a lot of it was founded upon traditional values and cultures and ideas of old Hawaii and the technologies they had back then. And a lot of it was mostly in Hawaiian culture, but I started to find connections between my technology classes and the traditional Hawaiian culture, and I was like, oh, I can utilize computers and technology to understand and see the stars and see programs different ways, and utilize the modern technologies to apply old knowledge and apply it to new ideas and focus on ideas of sustainability and ideas like that. I think the course that really set off that noticeable change was the Hawaiian Voyaging course I took in summer school of 2019. There was an app that we used called Stellarium on our computers, where it allowed us to see the night sky, and it had all of the different Hawaiian language, Hawaiian olelo for the stars and the constellations, and it was pretty amazing because I never really knew that we had that app to really, and technology to really see the stuff like that, and it was in my hand, able to look up into the night sky and use my phone to look around in a 360 view to see it in person. It was much more than a planetarium experience. So I think the modern technology, it really ties into that idea of sustainability, where it's more accessible to everyone, especially the children who are at the youngest of children, who have a lot of technology that they use these days. They have access to understand and see oh, this is what we can do, and yeah.
That's great. Were there projects or things you were involved in building or constructing which were sort of sustainability focused?
Not for my courses. It was actually my brother's courses. He took GSD and a couple other sustainable courses these past 2 years. He's a sophomore. He's going to be a junior now. His GSD course, he was asking me, Emma, I need ideas. And I'm like, I don't want to do your project. Come on, that's all you. That's all you. And he's like, I need some ideas. And I'm like, okay, let's just do some brainstorming. What are you interested in? And he was like, well, I need help with a farming and a agriculture project. And I'm like, okay, so do you want to like how do you, if you're into that, how do we want to see this and what do you want to visualize? And then we ended up, he ended up making a lettuce farm that I think they're at Bingham they're at Bingham throughout the school year, where they made a aquaponic farm that grew lettuce throughout the year, and it was pretty interesting to see that that whole process, and it was fascinating that, wow, like he actually grew lettuce, it actually worked, but yeah.
That's great, terrific. Do you think, Gabriela, do you think that the experience of voyaging or working in that communities changed the way that you teach? Do you think it's, thinking about your work as a teacher, are there values or practices or ways of thinking that you've kind of shaped the broader education that you're involved in?
Yeah, the shaping of the way we teach and just the general way of being and knowing after you come back from the middle of the ocean is, it goes through all facets and you can't ignore it. You put yourself, you just stretch yourself into these uncomfortable and then beautiful scenes on the ocean, and come back to that whole people aspect. It's given me, I've been lucky to have people like Uncle Bruce in my life, like my parents and teachers throughout Punahou that believed I could do more than I thought I could. Never in my life did I see myself as captain, as a Hikianalea. And, in that respect, and that confidence, and seeing, connection between people and doing this magical feat and walking in these footsteps of the ancestors, I think it just allows me to, tell these stories to my students, and helps hopefully them to relate and, be more real and authentic about it. This is what I teach. I teach me. I teach what I do, what I love to do. I never got a degree for doing all these miles, but my mother's telling me to take my mask off. In a way, when I step into the classroom, I'm stepping into the canoe. When I step into these outdoor education environments or onto the va'a, all the reflections and all the lessons I've learned with Hokulea, Hikianalea, all my captains are teachers. Bruce is my greatest teacher. The ocean is my greatest teacher. And so it's just kuleana, it's just responsibility at that point to pass it on. That's why we do it. It's a privilege and responsibility and a big burden that we shoulder, as these voyagers and leadership roles, and there's just so much work to do. And so, I think, it's so amazing how Punahou has taken a risk on all of these things, sending students, sending alumni out to sea, taking this risk on this va'a kamaola. And it's worth it in the end, I believe, in ways we might not even see. So it allows you to zoom out in a way as a teacher. Mm-hmm. It's the best professional development I've had. And I've been to some great conferences. So.
Yeah, I recall actually being with you on Hawaii Island at Kilauea Military Camp with the 5th graders. This incredibly beautiful, clear night sky. And I remember we all walked out to the edge of Haleimamau, and we stood there for probably about half an hour while you sort of identified constellations and sort of talked about different stars. And it was one of these nights where the stars were just leaping out of the sky. I mean, they were so bright. It was amazing. These 5th graders, they were dead silent. It was like mouth open, just in awe. It was great, really powerful moment. I was in awe too, actually, but it was just really, really amazing. Absolutely. I'm curious. I open this question really to any of you. What are some of the things that, as you think about sustainability, and you think about what you've learned in voyaging or in the class that you've been a part of, the engineering classes, or in the voyaging course itself, has it changed the way that you sort of function on a day-to-day basis? Has it changed your sort of behaviors or your practices Do you feel like you're a different person in some ways? And I'm curious as to, where that shows up. Does it change the way you spend your free time? Does it change the kind of things that you do? That's really a question for anybody.
I actually had this whole dream of like planning on doing like aerospace engineering up in college, but this past summer I did a food sovereignty student leadership program with Ma'o Organic Farms, and there was a lot that we learned, but the only thing I really remember was making tea out of like all of these dried leaves, and I was like, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just throwing dried leaves into a pot and making some tea. But what I really took away from it was that even though I want to get into engineering into college, I was like, it made me come to a realization where I was always being brought back to the idea of like, how can I apply this aerospace engineering degree back to sustainability and bring it back to Hawaii, and how can I incorporate that and help out with this worldwide challenge of climate change. And it really makes me think, like, now this summer my mom is like, oh, I need you to make a farm and I need you to design all this stuff in our yard, because if the world starts burning and falls apart, like, we need a farm, we need to figure out how to make food for ourselves and survive. And I'm like, that's great, Mom, but we also should think about like our community and our island too, and how we can like help out the people around us as well. And so I guess that's something that I've been brought to, and I've been really thinking about more now that I'm going out into college and out into the world, of like, how can I help out with the people around me, even if it's not in Hawaii, like just out on the mainland, international, and just worldwide communication and connections, of figuring out a way to bring it all together and help each other out.
That's great, thank you. Anybody else? Curious as to how this experience may have just changed either your future goals or perhaps even just your sort of day-to-day life, the way you spend time and how you think.
So I took the Voyaging course my senior year of high school, but I feel like my journey with this started actually more towards my freshman year and my sophomore year, with the planning of building Kamaola and just that whole process of actually coming together and thinking of how we could bring Voyaging into an institution like this. And I feel like it has definitely brought me a lot of life skills, both with grant writing and just even writing a good email, and just all these little life skills that I can apply into different aspects of my life, both with college, now I'm at UH, and also with my family and with my friends, and just knowing how to be a good person. And I feel like Voyaging, also just being on a wa'a, you see the land and you see your home from a different perspective than you would when you're actually standing on land. And just that whole perspective, I feel like, changes how I view my own footprint on my community, and both with sustainability and the people around me. And when you see Oahu from that perspective, you really see, oh, this is an island. This is not some huge mass of land, and we do have limited resources. And when being on a wa'a, it's like a small capsule for that, and you have limited resources. You only have what you take with you. So managing those resources is super important. So that's actually my major right now in college, is natural resource environmental management. So I feel like it has helped me to grow both as a person and a student, and just helped me with a lot of skills throughout my daily life.
That's terrific, thank you. Doug, I don't know if you have any questions from the audience. I'd love to take some of those. Thank you. So Kaneala, this is maybe a related question, and the question has to do with whether there's any lessons that you have learned from the voyage itself, that there's the idea of the canoe as an island, which I think reflects to Dylan's comments just a moment ago. How does that apply practically, you think, to the school or to the state? Maybe this is even building on the comments Dylan just made about what it means to think about the canoe as an island, or and how that shapes perhaps our thinking about what the school does.
Yeah, Punahou School is a va'a unto itself, and again, building upon what Dylan said there, it's exactly that. He va'a, he moku, he va'a. You go out to sea and you're surrounded by this canoe. All you have is ocean around you. You have to live within your means. And I struggle with this word sustainability, to be honest. We've used it for many, many years, and it really doesn't seem like enough to just sustain. All the things that you said in the beginning, is that really, we're just going to sustain this? And so when I think of a canoe, really putting a va'a, you think of, you go back in time and you think of putting this canoe to the water, sailing miles and miles and miles, thousands of miles across the sea. That was a resource-rich people that did that. And they were not just sustaining, they were not just surviving, they were thriving that they could do this. And it was almost this extra to go and do all this work, and feed all these people to put all that energy. And it comes back to energy, food, and water. Mm-hmm. Now you come back to Punahou, what are we doing in terms of energy, food, and water? Lots of good things with energy. We've got a lot of work to do in terms of water and food. And so, yeah, as we're sailing, we talk about these things. Lots of educators out there on the DOE. This past sail, half the crew were either within the DOE or working in a private school, independent school system, and we have these conversations. And again, it's like this, we're out there, we're going around the world, around the Pacific, and, listening and talking about it, but, what are we really doing in terms of food, energy, and water at home? And something we often forget in terms of the voyaging that it's almost like this bait, right? It's this beautiful romantic image of the canoe sailing across the ocean. I want to do that. But at the end of the day, these people were not just phenomenal seafarers, they were phenomenal farmers. Mm-hmm. They brought these plants with them. These plants survived across the sea. They planted those plants in the ground. They created a community. They created a system. The island becomes your canoe. Lacey Veach zoomed out even more and said, the earth is your island. And that is a super powerful statement. But really, what are we doing? Food, energy, and water right here at home. And I've been lucky to go with Ke'lo Hirapun out to Uncle Charlie and Uncle Paul's farm and just see those that are actually living, taking care of their canoe in the best way you can, taking care of their water every day, their food every day, their energy every day. And so, yeah, Punahou, we have just so many phenomenal resources, and vai, this word that means wealth, that means you have a lot of water. It's a critical time to be critical towards it. And so, yeah, like she said, you watch these islands rise from the sea, and you're so happy to be close to land and get ice cream and a cold water because you haven't had any of that for a long time, and get something other than salt water as far as a bath goes, that you fall in love with the island. And in the end, that's the goal, because I kind of go back and forth on it. It's like, how we, expending too much energy by teaching these students about voyaging, should we be back with our hands in the dirt? And so it's, constantly thinking about that. And I do believe that if you can zoom out and look at how beautiful our islands are, and you go, you come into Hawaii Island and you see the communities there, and you see what they're doing with food, then you realize how special our home is. And you hope you take care of it. And that's something Nainoa always talks about. You're not going to take care of something you don't love. And yeah, that's kind of the big link with voyaging. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. We've got one last question, which I think, Marion, maybe you could sort of take a shot at it, and we could sort of reflect a little bit about it. Listening to you talk about your family, and hearing about your brothers, seeing your son sitting here, and seeing another generation of voyagers sitting over there. I'm curious as to what this perhaps says a little bit about Punahou's identity or legacy. Is there sort of a common theme here that you would draw based upon your own experience? Is there obviously, we're looking at another set of questions or issues which have emerged in our own era, but I'm curious as to see if you think there's a kind of through line, and what reflects that. Is it a way of teaching, a way of thinking? It's kind of a question about, I guess, legacy or tradition.
Yes, hard questions. One of the things I always identify with Punahou and Punahou people is a striving for excellence. And I see that, across this. Dylan was a former student of mine, former excellent student. I had many wonderful students, some kolohe, like me. And some excellent, like Dylan. And not only excellence, but a sense of persevering, resilience. One of the first emails I think that I got from Dylan about this notion that she had of creating a canoe here at Punahou, I went, oh my God, and I don't tend to be a naysayer, but I said, Les Jardins, they built their own canoes. Jay Dowsett helped with that, but that's toxic material. I don't think you want to even go there. What are you thinking? But she found a way around that. We had a builder, John Benson, right? Yeah, who built the canoes, and she just did something we say in Hawaiian, ho'omau. She persevered. And it's amazing to just see what's come of this program, and the linking back to Nainoa's vision of continuing what Herb Kane and Ben Finney and Tommy Holmes, other Punahou grad, set out to envision. So I don't know if that answers it as well as it could be answered, but I think that excellence, the perseverance, those are character traits that the school teaches.
Yeah, I would agree. It's exciting to see those, and I'm excited to see another generation of students interested in pursuing this. Huge opportunity for us all. Well, I hope you all enjoyed the conversation. I hope you have a fabulous week. I hope you all have a fabulous week, and that you all enjoy voyaging home, returning back to Punahou, establishing connections with your classmates, and really, I think, recovering that sense of what it is that makes this place so special to us all. Aloha, have a terrific night. Thank you so much.